When you begin to truly protect your energy, something remarkable happens not only within you, but also in how others experience you. Most people spend their days scattering their attention in 1,000 directions, constantly pouring out energy to people, places, and situations that neither value nor reciprocate it. They give endlessly because they fear that if they stop, if they pull back even for a moment, they'll lose their place in someone's life. But the paradox is this: it is precisely in withholding a little, in guarding your own vitality, that you actually become more deeply desired, more profoundly missed. Think about it. When you are always available, always ready to respond at a moment's notice, always bending and adjusting your schedule to accommodate someone else's whims, you lose a kind of mysterious gravity. You become predictable, and predictability is comforting, yes, but it also numbs the soul. People only recognize the weight of your presence when they are forced to experience its absence. And absence is only created when you deliberately decide that your energy is not a free-for-all, that your time, your attention, and your heart are treasures, not handouts. Protecting your energy doesn't mean becoming cold, detached, or cruel. It doesn't mean playing manipulative games. It means honoring the truth that your life force, your creativity, your laughter, your warmth, your love, is finite. It can be drained, it can be wasted, it can be poured into empty wells. And if you allow that to happen, you diminish not only your value in the eyes of others, but also your own capacity to grow into the person you are meant to be. Men, in particular, begin to take for granted the woman who gives ceaselessly without pause. But when she begins to draw a line, when she steps back and invests in herself, something shifts inside of him. He begins to sense a gap. He notices the silence. He feels the missing piece. Protecting your energy is really about making a statement. I am not here to be consumed. I am here to live, to flourish, to expand. And if you want access to me, you must come with respect, consistency, and depth. That kind of presence forces others to rise to the challenge. It ignites a sense of pursuit. Men start missing you more, not because you've vanished in bitterness, but because you've chosen to preserve the essence that makes you radiant. Your absence highlights your worth far more than constant availability ever could. And here's the crucial part. This isn't about manipulating someone into longing for you. It's about aligning with the truth of your own value. When you protect your energy, you no longer operate from fear of losing someone. You move from a place of strength, knowing that your life has meaning and beauty, with or without their validation. That shift alone makes you infinitely more compelling, for men sense it. They sense the difference between a woman who gives from desperation and a woman who gives from fullness. The former can be replaced, the latter is unforgettable. So let me be clear, protecting your energy is not selfish, it is sacred. It is the ground upon which respect is built. It is the silent force that causes people to reflect on who you are when you're not around. And it is the very reason men will find themselves missing you more deeply than they ever expected. Because your energy, once guarded, becomes rare, and what is rare is always treasured. Never forget this. When you protect your energy, you don't lose people. You reveal who was truly worthy of it in the first place. When you choose to live fully without him, you awaken a kind of power that cannot be ignored. Too many people, especially when they care deeply, fall into the trap of centering their entire existence around another person. Their joy, their schedule, their very sense of identity starts to revolve around whether he calls, whether he notices, whether he approves. And the problem with that is simple. When you orbit someone else's world, you forget that you were born to create your own. Nothing diminishes desire faster than dependency, and nothing amplifies it more than independence that shines without apology. Think about it. When your days are filled with your own pursuits, when you wake up excited not because of what someone else may or may not do for you, but because of what you are building for yourself, you immediately become magnetic. There is something irresistible about a person who is fulfilled from within. A woman who lives fully without him sends a clear message. My happiness is not conditional. My sense of worth is not tied to whether you acknowledge me. My life is rich, layered, and expansive, and your presence in it is a privilege, not a necessity. Men feel this. They notice it in ways they can't always articulate. They notice it when you're too busy creating, learning, laughing, and experiencing to be constantly checking on them. They notice it when they realize you are not sitting around waiting. You are not clutching your phone hoping for a message. You are not rearranging your entire life to fit into theirs. Instead, you are already alive, so alive that their absence doesn't define you. And that is when they begin to miss you, because they see that life moves forward with or without them. The contrast is striking. The more fully you live without him, the more he feels the emptiness of not being part of that life. Living fully without him is not an act of defiance. It is an act of alignment. It is saying to yourself, I refuse to shrink just because someone has not yet chosen to step up. I refuse to pause my dreams, my friendships, my passions, waiting for someone else to validate them. And paradoxically, that very refusal awakens a man's longing, because he begins to see that you are not tethered to him like an anchor. You are already moving, already soaring, and he must catch up if he hopes to stand beside you. And let's be honest, deep down, people don't admire those who abandon themselves for love. They admire those who remain whole, who remain complete, and who bring that wholeness into relationship. A woman who lives fully without him is not signaling that she doesn't care. She's signaling that her life is already valuable, and she will not diminish it for anyone. That is a force that commands both respect and desire. So do not be afraid to live boldly, to travel, to learn new skills, to nurture friendships, to build the career, to dive into the passions that stir your heart. Because when you do, you not only enrich your own soul, you also awaken in others the profound recognition that your presence is extraordinary. And absence, in that case, becomes deeply felt. The truth is, when you live fully without him, you are not trying to make him miss you. You are simply living as though your life matters, because it does. And in that authenticity, in that vibrancy, he will realize something powerful. You don't need him to complete you, and that is precisely why he will long to be part of your world. There is something profoundly compelling about a person who does not chase validation. Most of us, whether we realize it or not, are constantly seeking little signals from the outside world to reassure us that we're enough. We scroll endlessly for likes. We wait anxiously for replies. We measure our worth against the shifting standards of someone else's attention. And while that hunger for validation is very human, it is also the very thing that weakens us, because when you seek it, you hand over your power. You make your value dependent on whether someone else chooses to grant it to you, and nothing makes you easier to overlook than when you are desperate to be noticed. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine a woman who doesn't need that reassurance to know who she is. She doesn't wait for someone to affirm her beauty before she feels radiant. She doesn't wait for someone to applaud her achievements before she knows they matter. She doesn't beg for attention or demand approval because she is already rooted in the truth of her own worth. That woman becomes unforgettable. Why? Because she cannot be manipulated by scarcity or silence. She cannot be controlled by the threat of being ignored. Her presence speaks for itself, and that absence of need creates a kind of gravity that pulls people toward her. Men, in particular, notice this difference. They notice when a woman is unconsciously chasing scraps of approval, adjusting her words and behavior just to keep the peace or to win a smile. And they notice, even more powerfully, when a woman refuses to play that game. A man begins to miss the woman who does not chase him, because her lack of need exposes his own. Her strength unsettles him, because it suggests she will never cling simply for the sake of not being alone. She will only stay where she is respected and valued. That kind of independence makes her rare, and rarity always commands longing. This is not about arrogance. It is not about saying, I don't care what anyone thinks. Of course you care. That's part of being human. But it is about refusing to let that care define you. It's about choosing not to live in constant pursuit of external approval, because you understand that no amount of validation will ever compensate for a lack of self-respect. And paradoxically, the moment you stop grasping for it, validation begins to flow to you naturally. People admire those who walk into the room without needing permission to belong. They admire those who are grounded enough to remain steady whether praised or ignored. The absence of chasing creates presence. It allows your relationships to shift from dependency to authenticity. When you don't chase validation, you show others that you are with them, not because you need their constant approval, but because you choose to share your life with them. That choice carries weight. It is felt deeply. And in that space, men begin to miss you more, not because you demanded attention, but because you're selfish. Florence left an imprint that lingers when you are not there. Never forget this. The more you seek validation, the more it escapes you. But the moment you stand firm in your own worth, the world cannot help but take notice. And in that strength, in that refusal to beg for recognition, you create a lasting impression, one that will echo in the hearts of those who realize too late what they had when you were near. There comes a point in every person's life when they must decide what they are willing to accept and what they are not. That line, invisible yet undeniable, is what we call a boundary, and yet so many people, especially those who deeply care, struggle to draw it firmly. They hesitate, they feel guilty, they worry that if they say no, they'll lose affection, approval, or connection. But the truth is, without boundaries, there can be no real respect. Without boundaries, you become a participant in your own diminishment. And paradoxically, it is when you set boundaries without guilt that others begin to miss you most. Why? Because boundaries communicate self-respect. They say, I will not abandon myself just to keep you comfortable. And people feel that even if they don't admit it. Men, in particular, are drawn to a woman who knows where she stands, who doesn't bend endlessly out of fear, who doesn't sacrifice her dignity in the hope of preserving a fragile attachment. Such a woman becomes memorable because she is not replaceable. Her standards elevate her presence. The absence of boundaries, on the other hand, only leads to resentment, exhaustion, and invisibility. When you set a boundary, you are not punishing someone. You are protecting the space in which love and respect can actually flourish. It's easy to confuse compliance with kindness, but they are not the same thing. Compliance breeds bitterness. Kindness flows from strength. And strength comes from knowing who you are and what you will and will not tolerate. A man will miss the woman who held firm to her values, even if he pushed against them in the moment, because those limits carve out a unique shape to her presence. Without them, everything becomes shapeless, undefined, forgettable. The key, though, is to set boundaries without guilt. If you say no and then drown in apologies, you undermine your own stand. If you draw a line but then try to soften it to the point of erasure, you teach people that your no doesn't really mean anything. But when you set a boundary with calm conviction, when you own it without resentment and without guilt, you project a steadiness that commands respect. That steadiness lingers. That steadiness is missed. And understand this. Boundaries don't drive away the right people. They filter them. The people who truly belong in your life will respect those limits because they recognize the value in them. The ones who resist, who try to push past your boundaries, reveal themselves as unworthy of the very energy you are protecting. And in that revelation, you discover something liberating. You never lose by standing firm. You only lose when you surrender your soul to keep what was never meant to stay. It's also worth noting that boundaries deepen intimacy. They create clarity. When you are clear about your needs, your values, and your limits, others know where they stand with you. That clarity builds trust. And when people trust that your yes means yes and your no means no, they lean into your presence with a seriousness they wouldn't otherwise bring. In your absence, they feel the weight of that clarity. They miss the strength, the structure, the safety it provided. So do not apologize for setting boundaries. Do not shrink from them out of fear of being misunderstood. Because every time you draw that line with quiet conviction, you reinforce the truth of who you are. And when you stand in that truth without guilt, you do not diminish your worth, you magnify it, and in magnifying it, you ensure that when you are not there, your absence echoes louder than words. Never forget, the boundaries you set are not walls to keep love out. They are gates that show exactly who deserves to walk in. There is a delicate balance in human connection, one that often goes unnoticed until it is gone. That balance rests in the ability to show warmth, to open yourself with sincerity and care, and then, at the right moment, to step back. Too much warmth without space smothers. Too much distance without affection creates coldness. But when you know how to offer genuine presence and then retreat into your own life, you create a rhythm that is deeply compelling. It is in that rhythm that longing is born, and it is in that rhythm that men begin to miss you more than they ever expected. Think of it this way: warmth is the signal that you are human, that you are open, that you are capable of giving something real. It might come through a smile, a kind word, a small gesture of care that shows you see the other person. It's not grand, it's not forced, but it's undeniable. That warmth makes someone feel seen, and for a moment it lights them up. But if that warmth is given constantly, if it's poured out endlessly without pause, it loses its potency. Familiarity can dull appreciation. What is always present risks being taken for granted. That's why the step back matters. When you step back, you allow space, space for reflection, space for appreciation, space for the other person to feel the contrast between your presence and your absence. Men especially notice this contrast when you give warmth and then pull away, not in coldness, not in resentment, but simply to return to your own life. They feel the void. They realize that the energy you brought wasn't just ordinary background noise, it was life, giving. It was rare, and they begin to crave its return. This isn't about manipulation. It's not about playing games or withholding affection to punish. It's about living with balance. It's about recognizing that your love, your laughter, your attention are valuable, and that their value is heightened when given in measured doses, not in constant overflow. When you show warmth and then step back, you remind others that you are a complete person, not a source of endless supply. You remind them that access to you is a gift, not an entitlement, and in that you create something powerful: anticipation. Anticipation is the spark of desire. It's the reason we look forward to holidays, why we savor the moments of reunion, why absence so often sharpens affection. Without space there is no longing, without longing there is no missing. So when you step back, you're not withdrawing love, you're giving it room to grow. The beauty of this rhythm is that it makes your relationships richer, not poorer, because every moment of warmth feels more precious when it isn't constant. Every smile, every touch, every conversation carries more weight because it stands against the backdrop of space. That space allows the other person to see clearly what you bring, instead of drowning in it until they stop noticing. So remember this: your warmth has power precisely because it is not limitless. It has meaning because it is tied to your freedom, your independence, your ability to step back into your own world. A man may enjoy constant attention in the moment, but it is the absence after warmth that will haunt him, that will remind him of your uniqueness, that will make him miss you more than words can express. Never underestimate the strength of this balance. Give sincerely, then return to yourself. Shine, then allow the glow to fade. Because in that ebb and flow, in that beautiful rhythm of closeness and space, you do not just create desire, you create memory, and memory is what makes you unforgettable. There is nothing more magnetic, nothing more lasting, than a person who is unapologetically themselves. Most people spend their lives bending and twisting, trying to fit into molds they believe will make them more acceptable, more likable, more desirable. They silence their true voice, hide their quirks, and mask their individuality, all in the hope of pleasing someone else. And while this may buy temporary approval, it always comes at the cost of authenticity. The tragedy is that in chasing acceptance, they erase the very thing that would have made them unforgettable in the first place. When you choose to be unapologetically yourself, you are making a declaration. I will not sacrifice who I am just to be tolerated. I will not dilute my essence just to fit someone else's narrow frame of expectation, and that declaration carries immense power. It creates a presence that lingers in the minds of others long after you've left the room, because authenticity has a weight to it. It is rare, and whatever is rare is always missed. Men feel this power deeply. They notice when a woman is trying too hard to mold herself into whatever she thinks they want. At first, it may flatter their ego, but over time, it becomes unremarkable, predictable, even forgettable. But when a woman refuses to mask her fire, when she is bold in her truth, when she owns her imperfections and her brilliance alike, she becomes impossible to ignore. He knows she won't bow just to keep his interest, and in that realization, he feels a pull that cannot be faked. Being unapologetically yourself doesn't mean being careless or dismissive of others. It doesn't mean refusing to grow or refusing to listen. It means being anchored so firmly in your values, your personality, your dreams, that no shifting opinion can uproot you. It means you laugh when you feel joy, you speak when something matters, you pursue what ignites your soul, regardless of whether everyone approves. That kind of self-possession commands respect, and when it's gone, its absence is deeply felt. Think of the people who remain in your memory, the ones who shaped you. Were they the ones who bent to every expectation, or were they the ones who stood out because they were undeniably themselves, even if it unsettled others? That is the mark of authenticity. It leaves an imprint, and in relationships it creates longing. A man may walk away, he may think he can find someone easier, someone more malleable, but when he does, he quickly discovers that sameness is empty, and what he really misses is the unshakable presence of someone who dared to live as she truly was. This path is not without cost. Being unapologetically yourself means some people will reject you. They will misunderstand you. They will criticize you, but those who remain will cherish you because you gave them something rare, the truth. And in a world drowning in masks and performances, truth is unforgettable. So don't apologize for your depth, for your standards, for your passions, or for the way you take up space. Don't shrink to make others comfortable, because when you do, you rob not only yourself of freedom, but others of the gift of truly knowing you. And when you stand boldly in who you are, without compromise, without pretense, you ignite a presence that no one else can replicate. That presence, once experienced, cannot be forgotten, and when it is gone, it will be missed with an intensity that imitation will never replace. Never doubt it. The most unforgettable version of you is the one that refuses to be anything other than yourself. And that is the version the world will miss most when it is no longer there. At the heart of everything we've explored, The truth is simple but profound. People only begin to miss you deeply when you stop abandoning yourself for their comfort, protecting your energy, living fully without him, refusing to chase validation, setting boundaries without guilt, offering warmth and then stepping back, and standing unapologetically in your own truth. These are not just strategies for relationships, they are principles for a meaningful life. When you embody them, you stop living from fear and begin living from strength. You stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. And in that transformation, you become unforgettable. Because here's the reality, no one truly longs for what is always desperate to be held on to. They long for what is strong enough to stand alone, yet generous enough to share its light. And when you become that, when you embody that balance, you will not only be missed, you will be remembered. And being remembered is far more powerful than being merely noticed.